We all know the story of the Titanic, the iceberg, the lifeboats, the tragedy in the icy North Atlantic on April 15, 1912. But what if I told you the ship's most famous victim, Colonel John Jacob Astor IV, was carrying a secret that could have changed the future of travel? A secret that didn't go down with the ship, but was lost through a tragic misunderstanding on dry land. This isn't just a story about the Titanic. It's the story of a dream that was so close to taking flight. At the time of his death, John Jacob Astor was one of the wealthiest men on the planet. But beyond his New York real estate empire, he was a passionate inventor. Obsessed with what he saw as the true future, massive, luxurious airships or dirigibles. While Germany's Count von Zeppelin was making headlines, Astor was quietly designing his own. His vision, filed for patent in 1909, was for a colossal 700-foot-long airship, not for war, but for opulent transatlantic voyages, complete with dining rooms and sleeping cabins. He wanted to launch an American airship industry that would leave the Germans in the dust. But Astor had a problem. He had the money, but he lacked the cutting-edge engineering. This is where the story takes a secret turn. Astor had formed a secret alliance with a brilliant but eccentric German engineer, Dr. Hans Richter. Richter was a former protege of Count von Zeppelin who had broken away, convinced he could build a better, safer airship. He had developed a revolutionary, highly stable gas cell material and a groundbreaking new way to test the airship S-frame for stress. He saw Astor as the man with the unlimited funds to make his vision a reality. Their plan was audacious. Richter would secretly supply Astor with his advanced blueprints and formulas. Astor would then create an American company, seemingly independent, that would leapfrog German technology. The grand launch was scheduled for late 1913. From a massive hangar complex Astor was secretly building in Lakehurst, New Jersey, the very same place that would later become infamous for the Hindenburg disaster. In late 1911, the plan was set in motion. Richter sent Astor the formula for his new gas cell material, hidden inside the binding of a rare German poetry book. This book was locked away in Astor's New York safe. Then came the most critical piece. Richter's most important contribution was a small, experimental pressure gauge system. This device would have provided continuous real-time data on the airship's structural stress. It could have detected tiny fractures before they became catastrophic, potentially preventing almost every major airship disaster that followed. In the first week of April 1912, Astor was in Europe. He arranged to have Richter's vital prototype delivered to him in Cherbourg, France, right before he boarded his ship back to America. So when Astor stepped onto the Titanic on April 10, 1912, he wasn't just carrying luggage and his pregnant wife, Madeline. He was carrying the future of American aviation. The package from Richter was disguised as an expensive antique barometer, but inside that polished brass casing was the delicate, world-changing prototype. Astor, not trusting the ship's safe, kept the barometer secured in his stateroom, 100 to 62. We all know the tragic night of the sinking. Astor helped his wife into a lifeboat and calmly faced his fate. But what happened in his final moments is the core of this historical mystery. As chaos engulfed the ship, Astor was seen on the grand staircase. He handed a junior crewman a handwritten note and a small, heavy object wrapped in waterproof oilcloth. He reportedly said, "Take this. It's the only thing that matters. Give this note to the man who meets you at Pier 54 in New York and tell him the code word is Zephyr. Now go." The crewman, terrified, eventually made it onto collapsible lifeboat B, that overturned raft that floated precariously until dawn. The small, heavy object remained strapped to his chest. When Astor's body was recovered, the barometer was nowhere to be found. It wasn't in his pockets, and it's never been recovered from the wreck. So, who was this crewman? The story gets a little tangled here. Some accounts point to a young stoker, others to different survivors. The most credible trail leads to a White Star Line quartermaster named Robert Hickens, who was also on Collapsible B and already disgraced for his conduct during the sinking. Fearing for his career, Hickens kept quiet about the package until he was back on shore. But he didn't go to the White Star Line. He followed the instructions on Astor's note, which led him to Newport, Rhode Island, and a man named William C. Miller, Astor's loyal estate manager. In late May 1912, in a quiet corner of Newport, the exchange happened. The code word Zephyr was spoken. Hickens handed over the note and the package. The note, written on Titanic stationery, was chilling. It said, "Miller, the game is over. The blueprints are in the vault. This gauge is Richter's only proof. Get it to the hangar at Lakehurst and begin the tests. Do not open the book. Madeline is safe. We must fly." JJA, the package contained the revolutionary pressure gauge. But here is the devastating twist. Miller was not an engineer. He was a finance and property manager. He looked at the intricate device, read Astor's frantic words, and saw only a cryptic instrument and the phrase, "The game is over." Miller made a catastrophic misinterpretation. He believed the note was a dramatic, final request from his dead employer to destroy what Astor must have considered a failed obsession. He knew Astor had been ridiculed for his flying cigars, and in his grief, Miller thought he was protecting his master's honor and privacy. So he didn't contact Dr. Richter, he didn't tell the Astor family, and he certainly didn't send the package to the airship hangar in Lake. Instead, William Miller quietly had the revolutionary gauge dismantled, and its components were buried in a simple wooden box on Astor's Newport estate. The book with the secret formula remained locked and forgotten in the New York safe. Meanwhile, in Germany, Dr. Richter grew impatient. His coded telegrams to New York were met with confusing replies that Astor was unavailable. Assuming Astor had abandoned him, Richter made a fatal mistake. He sold his designs to the Zeppelin Company for a fraction of their worth. But the Zeppelin engineers were skeptical. They used Richter's superior gas cell material, which let their airships fly further. But they dismissed his sophisticated gauge technology as overly complex. This decision led to a new generation of magnificent, but tragically flawed airships including the Hindenburg. The final, crushing irony came on May 6, 1937. At the very place Astor had chosen for his American airship empire, Lakehurst, New Jersey. When the Hindenburg exploded, it was the definitive proof that the rigid airship era was over. But what if? What if Astor had lived? What if Miller had understood the note? Astor's American Airship Company would have launched years ahead of the Germans, using safer materials. And, more importantly, the precise structural monitoring from Richter's gauge, the one buried in the soil of Rhode Island, could have given crews the warnings they needed to prevent the very disasters that destroyed public faith in airships. The dream of a safe, American-led airship industry didn't die with John Jacob Astor on the Titanic. It died in the quiet, grief-stricken misinterpretation of a loyal employee. The era of the great airships ended not with a bang at Lakehurst, but with the silent turn of a spade in a Newport garden, burying a future that almost was. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into a forgotten piece of history, be sure to like and subscribe for more stories you thought you knew.